Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Farmer from HistoryOnDemand.org, and today we're going to take a look at some of the best Civil War books, in my opinion. I'm going to do book reviews specifically about 5 Civil War era books. So, for those of you who are Civil War buffs, get ready for some exciting reviews. And I'm going to base these books on a scale of 0 to 5. 0 meaning I don't like the book at all, 5 being an absolutely brilliant masterpiece and one of the best in history via consensus of scholars. So let's take a look at some of the best. And we'll start out with none other than Shelby Foote, The Civil War. He actually wrote 3 volumes, and volume 1 is Fort Sumter to Perryville. So from the outbreak of the Civil War, it even actually starts in the 1860 election, and the southern states starting to secede from the Union, and then it talks about Fort Sumter, the first Battle of Manassas, around the time where Robert E. Lee takes command of the Army of Northern Virginia. It is a brilliant, brilliant masterpiece. Really, I would give it 5 out of 5, being absolute perfect. For those of you who watched the Civil War series done by Ken Burns, Shelby Foote was interviewed several times during that series, and really this is his life's work. He did 3 volumes. It's called The Civil War, and his name is Shelby Foote. And I would recommend all 3 volumes. They are all really, really detailed, but not in a boring way. It's like you actually feel like you're in the battles, and you can kind of get a sense of the social issues that were going on at the time, and it also kind of gives you an idea of the brilliance, the tactical brilliance of certain commanders. For example, Robert E. Lee, General Grant, Sherman, Stonewall Jackson. Really kind of gives you a more in-depth view of some of the most famous generals and personalities during the war. And really, it shows the brilliance, most of all, of Abraham Lincoln. And not only was he a great politician and unifier, but he also had a pretty good mindset, and he knew quite a bit about battlefield tactics. So, the Civil War is the #1 book, in my opinion, of Civil War books, and there's a large consensus on that. If you Google it, you'll see that the Civil War by Shelby Foote is typically going to be the highest ranked. Now let's take a look at some other ones. For those of you who like Stonewall Jackson, or if you're interested by him, The Rebel Yell, The Violence, Passion, and Redemption of Stonewall Jackson by S. C. Gwynne. And they also were a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize for a book they wrote, Empire of the Summer Moon. But this book itself, I believe, was written in 2014. Really, it's just right there behind The Civil War by Shelby Foote. The Rebel Yell is an amazing book. It talks about Stonewall Jackson, or it talks about Thomas Jackson, as he was known, all the way from his childhood through his time at West Point and through the Mexican-American War. And then it talks about kind of some of the things he was eccentric with. He had kind of peculiar habits, and some of it almost in like OCD. But he was a fascinating character, and really probably a top 5, maybe top 10 general in world history, not just U.S. history. And this book talks about his work at Manassas, where he got the nickname Stonewall Jackson, at the Henry House. Also, it talks about his tactical brilliance in the Shenandoah Valley, the Valley Campaign, and basically that helped save Richmond from falling to General McClellan and the Army of the Potomac. And it also talks about his family life. So it's good from the sense that you really will feel like you're there with him in those battles. I mean, it's probably the most vivid and detailed Civil War book in the sense that it has flavor, it has passion. So I would give it a 5 out of 5. Right there behind the Civil War by Shelby Foote. Here's another Civil War era book. called Team of Rivals, which was written by Doris Goodwin, and it was the winner of the Pulitzer Prize, and for good reason. This book not only talks about the brilliance, the amazing brilliance of Abraham Lincoln as a politician, but it also shows that he, for his cabinet, he picked those who ran as his opponents in the 1860 election on the Republican ticket. For example, Seward, who ended up becoming Secretary of State, Salmon, Chase, as well as others, and it goes into quite a bit of information about their personal life, so the members of his cabinet, and it shows strategically how much pressure Lincoln was under to keep the Union together and to bring reconciliation after Lee was defeated at Appomattox. So great book, very, very detailed. I would say it's probably about 80% social and emotional and about 20% battlefield tactics, but it is a great book. I would give it a 4.5 out of 5. Terrible Swift Sword by Bruce Catton. Bruce Catton, along with Shelby Foote, probably the most renowned Civil War historian. He had several great Civil War books, but this series, Terrible Swift Sword, there's a few books he wrote specifically on these series, but Terrible Swift Sword is a very good book. I would give it a 4 out of 5. It goes into great detail about battlefield tactics, and it's pretty unbiased. It's pretty even. You don't really get the sense that they're it's not politically correct. They don't favor the North or South. It just kind of talks about what was going on in the country as a whole. So Bruce Catton, that's B-R-U-C-E, Bruce Catton, C-A-T-T-O-N. Look him up. He's in the early 20th century, hands down, he was the source on the Civil War. And last but not least, Battle Cry of Freedom by James McPherson, the Civil War era, winner of the Pulitzer Prize. Now, surprisingly, I'm not the biggest fan of this specific McPherson work. I would give it a 3.5 out of 5. I feel it to be a little bit biased in the sense that it's easy to see things. Let me just put it this way. I sense that there was some bias for he may be a little bit too emotional when he showed favor to certain generals, and then other generals who deserve credit, it's like he tried to minimize their achievement. So I thought there was a little bit too much emotion and subjective bias, but it is very detailed, and James McPherson is brilliant. Many other books he wrote, I would give higher ratings than Battle Cry of Freedom. But Battle Cry of Freedom, with it winning the Pulitzer Prize, I wanted to review that. And overall, like if you're new to the history of the Civil War, Battle Cry of Freedom is not a bad source to go to. It's got a great deal of information. So those are just 5 Civil War books, and I got many more to review, many more book reviews coming up. But I hope you enjoyed this book review, and please like and subscribe. And in the comments section, let me know about certain topics in history or topics in general that you're interested in, or certain books that you might be interested in reading. And if I have read them, I'll be glad to do a review on those books. Thank you. Take care.